Yeah, thanks, Dave, for joining
Okay,
us today.
you bet. Well, thanks, Tim. Thanks to the Chamber for allowing me to take a few minutes today. Today is a big day for Sierra Sands. We opened up our 10 schools to to the community, and we have around 50 between 5,200 and 5,300 students enrolled in our 10 schools, and about 98% of those students are have elected to be in our schools in our full day program. So that's really good news for connecting students and connecting staff in the learning process, and we're really excited about that. Now, in light of Dr. Chabo's news and information, obviously there are a lot of critical points of safety and consideration, and we all need to be very, very thoughtful and intentional about maintaining the safety. So um, I will say I was really excited. I was able to experience the excitement and attending some schools. I was at Burroughs High School today, at Pierce Elementary, and just seeing the students and seeing the parents, talking with several parents, there's definitely excitement in the air. And there's no doubt that the learning process, there is kind of that magical process that takes place when we're connected with one another, and we're able to not just learn the academics, but also that social emotional learning. Taking care of each other, and understanding there has been some trauma going through the last 18 months. But my purpose in being here today is to talk to folks, to share out information, to be transparent, and to talk about preparing for tomorrow for Sierra Sands. So I'm going to actually share on my screen a document that's going to help me or help you follow along. Okay, can everybody see preparing for tomorrow visual, a little pictograph? Okay, so just a little bit of history. Over the last 15 years, we have been able to find sources of revenue to either to significantly modernize our schools or build new schools for 9 out of 10 of our schools. Back in 2006, our community supported us, and we passed a local bond measure. It was called Measure A. Several of you on the call here, I know, were part of the community and can remember Measure A. Measure A, originally it was passed with a $50 million bond allotment, if you will. But you all remember that after 2006, we had the Great Recession, and so our bond capacity in the community never went beyond about 50% of what the initial bond was passed for. So we were able to sell about $25 million worth of bonds between 2006 and 2010 or so, and we were able to significantly modify the majority of our schools. Plus, you will remember in the last decade or so, we've been very, very fortunate that some of our schools are on federal property, and the Department of Defense has granted us now 3 separate grants. One grant to build a brand new Murray Middle School, another grant to modernize Burroughs High School, and then another grant that is in play right now. And although this is very optimistic, we're still sharing our plan to open up a brand new Richmond Elementary School in August of 2023. And that school will be built on a piece of land just outside the back gate of the base, which is off Richmond Road and Ridgecrest Boulevard. So between Measure A, the Department of Defense, that's provided us 80% of funds for those 3 different grants I just described, and a number of other internal sources of funding, we've been able to modernize or build new 9 out of 10 schools. But it leaves us with an issue that we must solve. So looking at this pictograph here, we have established over the last few years what our needs are, our most basic needs, and that is equitable access to modernized classrooms and school facilities for all. We believe that we need to continue to deepen and enhance our STEAM and CTE opportunities throughout the district to serve our local community employers and also the general employment trends of the entire nation. And then lastly, fiscal efficiency and sustainability for the next generation. And so our vision is we believe that we could repurpose Monroe. In other words, close it to instructional programs, but retain it as a district asset. We could put district functions there. We could move various departments there. But the way the laws are written in California, it is much less expensive to put any attention to a school site when you're not serving instructional programs or students. And so we think we could do some fairly minor things and keep it as an asset for a non-instructional site. We believe we could leverage the brand new school that we were able to build in Murray by enhancing it and putting a 5 to 8 classroom wing, matching permanent wing on the campus. And we could reorganize our district to put all of the Valley's let me hide that. All of the Valley's 7th and 8th graders there. So currently we split our 6 through 8 middle schools, one half at Monroe and one half at Murray. We think that we could put all of the Valley's 7th and 8th grade students at the new Murray school. And then when all of the students who are currently at the Viewig campus, remember that Richmond school was destroyed essentially in the earthquake. It was the one in closest proximity to the epicenter, and it was already on a liquefaction zone that we didn't know, and it caused significant damage. So we moved all of our students over to the, at the time, empty Viewig campus. The California OES, so the Office of Emergency, let's see, Cal OES, Office of Emergency Services, I believe. Several millions of dollars from the state of California were invested into Viewig to improve it and make it safe. And so we think we could spend a few more $1 million to permanently modernize Viewig, such as like sewer systems and water systems and electrical systems. And we could house all of the Valley's 6th graders there, maintaining music programs and other secondary type programs that 6th graders are accustomed to. And then our last part of our vision is that we currently spend about $1 million a year on electrical bills. We literally write 85,000 plus or minus, checks on a 12-monthly basis. I mean, obviously it's more in the summer and less in the winter, but you get the scale, right? $1 million a year. We would like to install solar at the school sites and then pass a resolution at the board level that would take the savings from the solar and put that money on an annualized basis into a deferred maintenance investment account, establish a new committee that has both staff and parent representation, and that committee would make recommendations on an ongoing basis as to where to invest that many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, more than we've been able to, into facilities. So more of like that strategic long-term vision. So why am I saying all this? We believe that it is very possible that the board may need to consider putting a local bond initiative in the year 2022 and put it before the community to make a decision as to whether or not the community supports our vision and is willing to invest that way. We don't really have any other internal or known external sources of funding to bring us home for that last one of 10 schools that needs to be solved from a facilities point of view. So I just kind of wanted to start socializing this. I'm going around to every one of our school sites and our departments and sharing with employees. I'm going around to every community group and sort of sharing out this ground. It's kind of at a ground level. There's still room for influence and suggestions and questions. You might recall that a couple of years ago, we tested the community through a survey, a slightly different plan. The slightly different plan was, hey, what if we put all the 6th graders back at all of our 6 elementary schools, and then put all the 7th and 8th graders at Murray? Well, people seem to like the idea of putting 7th, 8th graders at Murray, but there was some consternation over putting the 6th graders back at all the elementary schools because mainly, number one was that parents were concerned that they would lose the music program and some of the STEM programs that we have available to 6th graders in a middle school environment. And there were some other internal issues. Some of our faculty were a little concerned about how that would impact, credentialing and assignments and such. And so we believe we've taken that input, taken that all of the information from sharing out and sort of refined our plan. And we believe we have the best possible plan that will cost the community the cheapest amount of money with the longest lasting positive impact. And we think this plan would cost somewhere between 35 and $45 million. And of course, that could be scaled way back by not installing solar if the community decided that they didn't like that idea, because we don't have to have the solar. We just think it would be a strategic benefit. So I'm going to pause and be very happy to answer any questions or points of confusion or comments about kind of what we've laid out before you.
Hey, Dave, I have a middle schooler right now, and he is super excited about trying out for the basketball team. How would repurposing and moving all the students, the 7th and 8th graders, to Murray and repurposing Monroe, how does that impact like sports for that age group?
Yeah, I would almost think that I had put you in as a plant to ask that question, and I didn't. The part that
I have a 7th grader who's very passionate.
I know. The part that I did not implement into the little schematic for the modernized viewing piece is because we're actually getting some completed cost estimates from our architect. Is our plan would be to actually build, so we would modernize Viewig, but part of the modernization would be to put a new gym on the campus, because if we repurpose Monroe and use it as like a district asset for employee functions and not school, then we're losing a gym in the district, right? And so the concept would be actually, and I need to make that addition into this pictograph as soon as we get the estimate, and we believe that our bonding capacity would suffice for putting a gym in there. We believe that within that $35 to $45 million cost estimate, that we could actually put a new gym on Viewig. And so what that would enable us to do is we would have plenty of instructional space for the academic, co-curricular, and music and CTE programs, like we have the engineering program at Murray Monroe currently. We can maintain all of those functions, and we would have a new gym so that the 6th graders could continue with what they've customarily been able to have, which is tryouts for things like basketball and boys and girls basketball and girls volleyball and et cetera. So our intention would be that we would not lose any programs that the community is accustomed to now. And frankly, you might ask, what do we mean in that little box that says enhanced STEAM and CTE opportunities? So in industry, we know in private industry that scale can be helpful, right? A larger corporation can provide like more services, like maybe a larger bank or a larger credit union, so in some ways can provide more services. I would also argue that there's other services that smaller organizations can provide too, but that's a whole different conversation. But we have found in the school district, with splitting our middle school population between Monroe and Murray, it has put some negative pressure on the number of sections we can support for certain advanced coursework or certain specialized coursework. Because when you take and you have relatively smaller to medium-sized middle schools and you split them, then sometimes that can put negative pressure on the scalability of certain pathways. And so we believe by putting all the 7th and 8th graders together, that it would improve the scalability of our pre-engineering program and our advanced mathematics pathways and some of our STEAM programs. So if that makes any sense, so we would be adding a gym to Viewig to support athletics for 6th graders and not lose that. And we also think that we would be enhancing our STEAM and CTE opportunities by scaling the number of students that we can populate in certain sections of coursework.
Hey, Dave, before you move on to the next one, could you just remind us what STEAM and CTE, what those acronyms stand for?
Yeah, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. STEM was kind of the big term that came out about 10 years ago, and then the A for the arts, and I think rightfully so, has created kind of a new standard for the acronym. And we do offer art at the middle schools. So,
And then what was CTE?
Career and technical education. And we obviously know that in our country, preparing students, not just academically, but also in, being ready and receiving at least some preliminary training in career and technical ed is a great best practice. And we also, I see Natalie on the line, we also have some articulated programs with Cerro Coso. We're really proud of that, where in some cases students receive dual credit. And that's really helpful for the statistics show that any high school student who has taken one or more college course, or either discretely as a college course or as a high school college dual credit course, that it statistically increases the likelihood that a student will actually go to college and take college coursework and hopefully matriculate, right? What else?
Hey, Dr. Ostash.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Solomon, you go.
Dr. Ostash, does Borough still have access to the base swimming pool as part of your intergovernmental agreement?
Great question, Solomon. We're actually talking literally this week with the base to secure a lease with the outdoor swimming pool for our swimming team. In order for us to run our swim program at Burroughs High School, which we all know is a very winning program, we need access to a pool from mid-March to mid-May. That's the period of time we need. And unfortunately, we didn't have access to any pool in the Valley. Our swim team won league nevertheless, and that was through the efforts of parents and doing some amazing things. But we are optimistic, and I do believe we will have a lease deal with the base for the outdoor pool. Obviously, we can't tell the future as far as the health conditions and what kind of restrictions potentially the base could have down the road that would get in the way of that. But based upon what we know right now and the commitment level of the base is, I believe we'll have access to the pool. Of course, Solomon, that's a whole different conversation about the absolute dire need of our community to have a community pool. We'll probably save that for a different conversation. But I do believe the base is, as always, the base wants to help us out, and I believe we'll have a pool this spring. But it was a huge loss not to have it last spring.
Thank you, Doc.
All right. Hey, Chris Hill here. I'm a big supporter. So I love the vision. I love the plan. With the solar aspect, all these other schools have these cool shade structures in parking lots where the solar's on top of that. Would that be something that would be hopefully part of the plan?
Thanks, Chris. It's always good to hear you. Yes, that's exactly what we plan to do. So our full vision would be that we would be able to install solar at all 10 school sites. And obviously, if we have to scale that back, let's say that the community is more excited about supporting a certain level of solar, we can install it starting at Burroughs, which is the biggest consumer of electricity, and then work backwards from there. We're very fortunate that the Department of Defense grant from DoD is actually looking like they're going to include solar in the new Richmond project, so we won't have to spend local money on that. We would start with Burroughs, and then we would install at Murray next, and then we would go down probably to either Fowler or Las Flores from there and keep going down. But we would hope to install at every school site, and we would be installing parking structures for shaded parking. And in some cases, honestly, Chris, in some cases, we might be able to install some solar shade structures as shade. We'd have to look at some of the specs. The state of California has some building code issues, but there may be some shade structures we can put out on some of the elementary playgrounds, so that we already have shade on schools, but we could maybe get more shade. But I want to highlight one thing about the solar. So there are over 1,000 school districts in the state of California, and I've done my research. I haven't found a single school district that would do what our idea is. Our idea is that we wouldn't just install solar and then figure out what the savings might be and then just absorb it into the general fund. Our idea would be that we would pass a resolution, that the board would entertain a resolution and codify it through obviously taking action on it, and that the savings of the solar would go into a special fund that could only be spent on district facilities, long-term maintenance, and even new facilities for that matter, and that the committee would make recommendations to district administration and the board. So you could have, in any given year, you could be putting new roofs on, you could be putting, a new field into a school. You could do anything facilities wise, and we don't really currently have a budget for that. And so we could have a significant increased amount of money that goes into our facilities. So because the vision is 10, 20, 30 years from now, we don't need to come to the community for more bonds because we created a regenerative, I guess pun intended, a regenerative source of funding by installing the solar.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. I guess all I would say, I don't know if there's any other questions, but as you think about this and you perhaps receive a phone call from a survey company in the next couple of months, I think we're going to start this in October and try and get this and see what the community thinks of it. By all means, if you have questions, suggestions, points of analysis, I welcome it, because at the end of the day, we know it's always challenging to get a plan and then get it embraced by a community and to fund it. And but we also we also know that thriving communities, there's a lot of points of success for that, but a thriving school district is no doubt. Any research you conduct, a thriving school district, a thriving educational pipeline is I think that a thriving community, it's completely is hinged on having a school district that is operating academically well, and also with first-class facilities. I just think it hinges on that. So we're looking ahead, and this type of planning is going to impact 10, 20, 30 years from now, and we're going to need that. We can't get caught flat-footed and not think about this.
Dr. Ostash, as part of your modernization, did you ever think of substituting water fountains with touchless water fountains, something like that?
It's interesting you mentioned that, because we just literally sent a work order out to the maintenance department to turn all our water fountains back on because they were turned off. Pandemic guidelines mandated they be turned off. Short answer is we've been looking at putting in those water fountains you see at the airports so that kids and staff can fill their water bottles. And I think some of those are actually touchless. And that's what we're looking to do. If that's what you're asking, that we intend to do that.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's awesome. Dave, we got a question at the chamber through the email yesterday from one of our members that had a question. It's not on the topic of preparing for tomorrow, but wanted to ask this question. So he emailed it to me, so I'm going to ask it for him. What's the status of Sierra Sand's stance on teaching the critical race theory in our schools?
Okay. Yes, so I'm sure that you've all at least heard about it, and that's been a kind of a lightning rod issue throughout the nation. I can just be plain about it and share with you that in Sierra Sands Unified School District, we do not teach critical race theory. In the state of California, curriculum that is taught must be reviewed, and it must be taken action upon by the school board, the elected board, our board of trustees. And critical race theory is not a curriculum that has been reviewed by our district and is therefore not part of our school board policy. So critical race theory is not taught in our schools. I will say to you that I believe that in our school district, we have a pretty strong legacy of having responsive, relevant, inclusive content. I can remember, for example, 25 years ago, I started in the district. I graduated from UCLA with my English degree, and I became an English teacher. And one of the first things I remember about halfway through my first year, I remember having a department discussion with my fellow English teachers because they wanted to bring Amy Tan's Joy Luck Club book as one of the novels that we read in the sophomore year. And so we went through the review process and the board adopted that. And I just remember that being an impactful experience about ways of remaining relevant and integrating contemporary works of literature, for example, into the high school. I know since then there have been a lot of works that have been included, like Native American literature and Chicano literature, et cetera. And so my response to you is kind of, no, we don't teach critical race theory, but maybe more broadly than that, we have quite a legacy of just having an inclusive, diverse set of American content in our literature, and I think that's served us really well. I don't know if the first answer is easy, right? We don't teach critical race theory, but the second answer I just was thinking of, that it's kind of a broad response, that it's important to us that our kids feel like all of our 5,200 students feel like they're, a part of our experience, and that our curriculum is, responsive and inclusive.
I thank you. Our chamber member wasn't able to join us today and asked that we ask that on their behalf. So when we post the recording, I'm sure they'll go back and listen to this. So I appreciate you taking that time just to respond to that question.
And if anyone had any, other talking points about, they're of course welcome to call me or email me, and I'll call them back and be happy to talk to them about it. Okay, well, I just appreciate, I don't know what time it is, 12:45. So I'm sure that's about the time you allotted. I certainly appreciate it, and welcome continuing the conversation with anyone by phone or if I see you out and about in town.
So Dave, before you go, what would your next steps be? What do you need us to do in the chamber and in the community to support your the Sierra Sands vision, and what steps are in front of us?
Well, so that's kind of the, literally and figuratively, the million or multi-million-dollar question. Being that the Chamber of Commerce is comprised of a lot of community leaders and business owners and people who are, drivers of the nation's wealth, and have very rightfully so have earned very strong opinions about, measures and taxes and things like that. And I know it's a sensitive and a very important topic. I guess what I would say is, I'm going to the real estate board, and I'm going to the service clubs, and I would just appreciate open, honest, courageous conversations. If people, want to challenge me and say, hey, I think that's a rotten idea, or it's a great idea, or have you ever thought about this? I would welcome that at the earliest stages, because like I said, the success of our school district is not a nice to have. It's a must have. We have to have a thriving school district for the majority, not all, but for the majority of Americans. I think that the biggest, most reliable roadway to the middle class is through an education. There are other roadways, and I completely value all the other roadways. In fact, I admire and respect that there are other roadways. But for most Americans, the most reliable roadway is through an education. And so I just think it's a must-have. We have to have a thriving school district. We have to solve these problems. We've been very successful in getting external sources of funding to do things. And I think we're going to find that we need, we're at a point where we need to, as a community, come together and support this plan to carry us the next 50 years. So I guess my answer to your question is I expect for there to be critical conversations and people who challenge me, and I welcome that. I completely welcome the challenge. And if there are things between now and next year that we can impact our vision and our plan that would make it more successful, then I'm 100%, and I know our board is 100% on board with that. So just having that conversations.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dave.
You bet.
Well, I thank you for taking time. It sounds like everybody asked the questions that they had. I want to remind everyone that while we weren't able to go in person to the USO building today, the Pizza Factory was going to cater, and they have offered a $2 off lunch buffet today, and that goes until 2 o'clock. So if you haven't had lunch already, run down to Pizza Factory, get your buffet on, and just mention the Chamber of Commerce. Oh, it looks like Gina Noble raised her hand. Gina, do you have a question you want to turn your mic on and ask? Oh, your mic's not on, I don't think.
Still can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Can you type it into the question into the chat, and then I can read it for you? Okay. I'm seeing a thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and especially thank you Dave for taking some time and sharing with us.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a good day, and watch out for the kids, because it's been a long time since we've had them walking home from school. So today's the first day. So be cautious as you drive past the schools and as you are in the neighborhood. Have a great day.